We are live. Wow. Okay. Howdy, everybody. This is Tech Talk Weekly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our weekly episode where we put out 20, 22 minutes or so of cool, fun science and technology and creation stories and things to help you learn and figure out what's going on. Today's a little bit different. If you're trying to watch us live, great. Thank you very much. StreamYard, our provider that works to do all of our live streaming, has been down for about 2.5 hours here. It was a Google Cloud problem. So they just came back up. So we're about an hour and a half late on our live stream. But if you're listening to this on the podcast, you don't care. You're like, Bob, just get me to the stories because that's all I want. You can send us your stories. Creation Station at Broward.org. They come right to us. Let's cover you with a few of the stories that are going on to this week. And my first story is not the one that's showing on the screen. Wow. Okay. So something fun, cool, interesting for you to know about is that Asteroids back in the news again. And what I mean by that is you've heard us talk on this show before about this asteroid that is going to hit the Earth. No, it's not going to hit the Earth. No, it is. No, it isn't. They've narrowed it down again. And you remember the last time we talked about this, they have narrowed it down to almost no chance of hitting the Earth, but it's probably going to hit the moon. But there was a small chance of it hitting the moon. Now it's probably going to hit the moon. Maybe. Again, small chance, but in astronomical terms and in overall percentage wise, this is a big thing because we've never had one that we saw ahead of time, that we knew where it was going to hit, probably with enough time to actually check this all out and do this. So presuming we still have a NASA and we still have people out there being able to do things in 2032, we will be able to see this happen. If we don't, the European Union, China, everybody else who's got space stations up there and satellites up there is going to track this for us and see what exactly happens if it hits the moon in 2032. I'm going to bet between now and 2032, we're going to have this story again at least 3 more times. But we'll get to that later on. You don't really care about that at the moment. I just thought it was a funny thing, like the asteroid just keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back. Another very cool story that's happening in the news right now is they just did a big discovery. They just did a big research project on wind farms because they were trying to prove that wind farms are destroying the natural environment. They're not. They found out that, yes, when you go in and you put in a wind farm, it does severe damage to the local marine environment. It causes all sorts of problems. And you're like, Bob, that doesn't sound like a very good story. But once the construction stuff is done and finished and out of the way, there are whole ecologies that rebuild themselves around the bottom of these wind farms. This was done over in the North Sea, over in the EU. And because there's no fishing near those areas, because you can't get a fishing ship in there and do trawling and nets and everything, the fish come back faster there than anywhere else. There's more diversity because you're not wiping out a whole section of a particular species like they do in those things. And for those on the video feed, sorry, I look like I am a ghost. I have no idea where that extra white light came from here. And so the whole area, that whole ecosystem just rebuilds itself. It's amazing. And more predators, more feeding fish, all the stuff. And it comes back to almost better than it was in some cases before you put in the wind farm. It's a really cool story. We need to do more wind farms and figure out a way to build around them and do the stuff. It's a positive story, even though putting in the wind farm up front really wrecks the ecology at first. And you just get used to looking at them. Just ignore anybody who's like, oh, but they look horrible. Who cares? You need to cheap, free electricity. Then, because I want my electricity for my robot that's going to make my pizza. We've talked about this company before, also on the show a couple of years ago when they first put their very first working models out. And I was like, hey, this would be cool. I'd like to see a robot making pizza. Turns out the robots are taking people's jobs. Maybe, kind of. We don't know. But in a good way, because they can make 100 pizzas an hour. The newest models that are up there. And this is not like, okay, well, there's a couple of these things out and people are using them and they're showing off. They've actually rebuilt their whole thing from the very first one they did. These are now, as you can see in this picture, they are now tabletop models, 100 pizzas an hour, and they're making 25,000 pizzas a month per robot. Think about that. How many pizzas could you be selling if you could make 100 an hour? It's an insane thing. All you have to do is type in the little things. I need pepperoni, bacon, and green peppers. I don't know who wants green peppers on their pizza. I'm a carnivore. But here you go, and boom, it's called X Pizza Cube, because X Robotics, and it used to be either I before everything, and now it's X before everything. Well, now it's AI before everything also, but we'll get to that story in a few. So I thought this was a good way of go look at this story. Remember, it's all in the show notes to see what it's like to have a niche area. Pizza making has multiple companies competing with multiple robots that are there to potentially do some things with people. Could put some people out of a job, could actually start some people in jobs because they will now have the ability to open up their own business and do their own pizza thing and compete against the other people. One last quick hit story for you, and that is books are deadly. Well, so here's the thing. Here in the United States, by the way, this is a listener story also. From one of our people over in London. In Victoria, they used to do lots of different colored plates in the books in the Victorian age. So this is primarily stuff that's happening in the UK, a few things in the United States, but more collectible types came to the United States. But over there, in the 1800s, there were a tremendous amount of publishing with these, what turned out to be toxic chemicals. And if you have these in large quantities, like a library, you could be breathing in these things and it could do really horrible things to your system, including death. And guess what? Librarians don't get paid to be dead. Not many people get paid to be dead either. But you wouldn't think librarians would have this problem, would you? So they have found that there's some significant problems with these books still 150, 200 years later. But there's this very cool new thing. I'm looking for the picture. Here it is. They have a brand new device that you can use as a scanner, kind of like infrared, but it's only tracking the specific chemicals that are caused and reactions caused by these toxic chemicals in the paint that they were using during this time frame. And so you can then try to mitigate it, or at least separate these books and put them into a safe space to do that. And if you're like, Bob, anybody could have done that all along. They do that all sorts of crazy things. The answer is yes, but you could do full spectrometry on everything. We do that on a lot of different stuff. However, a small handheld version device, very well tuned to these particular chemicals, is about 10% of the price of the full big machine. So yeah, now they can actually save this. They can do this. and go around and save these types of books for wherever they went off as collectibles. It's a great thing. It's a very cool project. Now, 2 big stories for the week. First one is one of our listeners said, "Hey, Bob, I'm up in Milwaukee and I probably just mispronounced that too also, because I didn't pronounce it like a native up there. But they had some issues up there with security / safety / privacy / public stuff. So they had a question for me to answer. The question became, what should somebody be worried about on these things? And the answer is, you should. You should definitely be worried about these. You should definitely be concerned about it. In Milwaukee, there's 2 different things that are coming up. One is license plate cameras, and another one is red light cameras. Bringing that up now. Stop with the ads. And red light cameras. In both cases, this city already has all of them, and they want to expand it. And somebody said, well, wait, and we've got these protests, and what's happening? Can they use those cameras to track protests? And can they do these things? And the answer is always maybe. So if you're out there and you are considering these sorts of things in your community, our community down here in Broward, of our 36 different cities, some cities have got red light cameras, some don't. Most places have given up that in the state of Florida because of different reasons of how you can track it and privacy concerns. Not all states are as advanced with privacy concerns like Florida is, weirdly enough, and they still do these things. In fact, the 3rd story about this is from Oregon, who is authorizing drones to fly over private property so that they can do this. And I want to point out, all 3 of these stories, it is a combination of Democratic and Republican city, county, state representatives. This is not a partisan issue. This is something that is an ideal of what are you going to do with these for safety versus privacy. And the real answer that I can give you on these stories and what's going on right now is, yes, there are cameras out there. Yes, they are tracking things. And if your police department, your legislature has done their job correctly, no one should see that footage without an official court order and a warrant. That's how it goes here in Florida. You need a warrant. You have to be able to do these things. Nobody can just show up and do this. So I encourage you to check with your local ordinances and check with your own city and county, anywhere you are here in the United States or around the world. I know we have a lot of people in Britain and the EU and Belgium that listen to us. Find out what your rules are for your local areas for tracking those types of things, because that is an important issue that everybody should be thinking about. Finally, the last story, another listener story. We've had 3 of them today, which thank you all very much for sending these in, is all about AI from Apple. So Apple had their big event earlier this week. And as usual, we don't cover a lot of that kind of stuff on the show here because so much of it is, this is going to come out or that's going to come out. And when it actually comes out, that's when we talk about it. We try not to give you things that may be coming out there at some point. This was a paper about AI that was released, so we can talk about it. And it's talking about the idea of the strengths and limitations of a reasoning model for AI. This is put out by people who are doing the Apple voice assistant. I will not trigger that word for you. And I want to make sure that you understand this is a research paper. And of course, in the show notes, we have a link to the actual paper for you. All 30 pages. I am not going to go through all 30 pages with you. But the basics of the paper are, we've studied models. When models get too big, we think they break down. That's the extent of what it really is. Now, you're going to hear all sorts of other people talking about, oh, no, they mean this. Oh, no, they mean this. Because it depends on whether you are pro hyper AI stuff going on or very anti AI stuff going on. You can read a lot into this, and it feels like this is something that can be on either side. You can use it to support either side. And the reason for that is because this paper does. It says, here's some good things that AI is doing and able to reason through. Here's some other things that it's too complex for the AI to handle at the current models that we have. And it does not draw the conclusion that you need to make bigger models or better models or anything. It is a study and a paper about understanding what the possibilities are. And that's it. It does not make recommendations. It does not say that it's a horrible thing or it's a great thing. I encourage you to go read the article from Apple and read the synopsis. Read the abstract in the paper. See what you think about it. If you really want to get into AI, if you think you know about it, then go read all 30 pages and come back and send us a comment about whether you do believe or don't believe in this kind of thing, for whether this is a hype positive or hype negative. But I do want to point out, I've got one more story about that, because I've talked about hype before on this show. Remember, we're in season 5. We saw this kind of hype going on during blockchain. And we covered blockchain stuff back in season 1 and season 2. And everybody was like, oh, this is going to be the big thing. I said, blockchain's going to be okay. Cryptocurrency is not. I've never believed in cryptocurrency for the reasons why people claimed they wanted it, as exactly what is happening now under our current administrations, where rules change and tax law changes about it and everything, and lots of people get disappointed in what's happening because it's not what the hype was. AI is going through that same point right now. Everybody wants to know everything there is to know about AI and how it's going to change the world, and no one's going to ever be the same. Correct. No one's ever going to be the same, because once we get through this hype cycle, and I'm going to put the standard Gartner hype cycle up on the screen for you in case you've never seen this, where you have a new technology and everybody's super enthralled and it shoots straight to the top. And then you go, wait, it's not really doing what we wanted to do. And it drops and it plummets. And that trough of disillusionment is where a technology is either made or broken. 3D televisions. If you remember those, they were everywhere, and everyone's going to want one, and everyone's going to do this. And that peak went way up there. And then it crashed really hard when people figured out, wait a minute, nobody wants to put on the glasses at home to watch them, and nobody's making 3D content. And so it just crashed. And that slope of enlightenment was, oh, this isn't very good, and the productivity just didn't exist. And most companies got out of it very quickly, which is the correct thing to do. You find your plateau of productivity and you say, okay, look, this is not a viable technology, and we drop it. That's what this whole cycle is about. It doesn't mean something's always going to be successful. It just means here's the various stages as people go through learning something new. This applied during cryptocurrency. This applied during blockchain. This applies during AI. And we are right now still not at the peak of expectations. I want to point this out. We're at about 2 years now into large language models and the algorithmic hype things of AI, and it's still going, and there's still new stuff, and there's still bigger things. We haven't hit the peak yet because we haven't passed the point of people not subscribing. If you are a casual viewer, casual understanding of AI, you may think, okay, well, I just go use it and I do this and it just works and it's all free because it's the internet and everything's free. AI is never free. There's always a cost involved, just like everything on the internet, there's a cost involved. And B, to use all this really cool AI stuff you see in the news and stuff, you probably need a $250 a month subscription to that one company to use their one set of products, and another $200 subscription to another company to use their set of products. We are still at the point where people are willing to pay the companies that money to do that. And I don't think it's worth it. Me personally, I personally have 0 subscriptions like that to any kind of AI modeling thing. But that's just me. I want to make sure that when I am doing this, I am getting the value that I need and I'm not harming people. And I will point out, there's not a lot to put on the show today for it. Probably in a couple of weeks there will be. Disney just sued Midjourney, which is one of the large AI companies that does visual things. And Universal and Disney are joining forces to sue Midjourney over copyright violation. Disney, if you pay any attention to them as a company, as using their IP, their intellectual property, they rarely lose in court. And their normal means is they own your company afterwards. Or you pay such a huge fine that you don't have a company anyway. So it is beginning, right, as I said, right there at the peak right now. And when the big companies like that, like Disney and Universal, are going after Midjourney, which is one of the large AI companies putting out visual works, now we're getting to a point of the rubber's going to hit the road. Now all these lawsuits that we've talked about on the past, last year and earlier this year on the show, we're going to find out what all that happens. Keep paying attention. Keep sending your stories in. Keep giving us feedback to make sure we're covering what you want to know about, like we did today. Reach out, creationstation@broward.org. And we're going to see you all next Wednesday. Thursday is Juneteenth. Everybody in the United States should be celebrating that. And we are going to celebrate that by doing our show on Wednesday and taking Thursday off. Have a great time, everybody.